Hey, before we start the show today, holy cow, that's right, kids. We have a new patron. Yes, it is Ralph Estep Jr. Check out his new show, because we know Ralph. He's been around a while. It is the Grit and Growth Business Show. Let me go over and read his About page. That's always fun. It says, if I can get my own stuff out of my way, Grit and Growth Business Strategies. The growth business hold on, let me read this again. Grit and Growth Business Strategies that grow business. You didn't build your business the easy way, and this podcast, well, it doesn't pretend it's easy. Hosted by Ralph Estep Jr., a seasoned accountant, entrepreneur, and business coach with over 30 years of real-world experience. Grit and Growth Business is for small business owners who build it from scratch and are still fighting to make it work. Each week, Ralph delivers straight talk coaching and practical strategies to help you grow a business that actually supports your life, not just drains it. I love that. We cover topics like pricing with confidence, fixing broken operations, getting paid, finally, and growing without burning out. No fluff, no hype, just gritty, honest insights and solutions that work in the real world. New episodes drop weekly. Again, visit his website, gritandgrowthbusiness.com, for tools, resources, and coaching. If you're tired of overnight success stories and ready for the real strategies that grow businesses, go over there, click on the follow button, because you are just getting started. So, Ralph, thank you so much for being an awesome supporter. We deeply appreciate that. And with that, I will say that it is May 31st, 2025. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach. Oh, see, I thought that we were so good. I thought if I hit the button on the other one, I thought it would stop that one automatically. So when I said, hey, Ask the Podcast Coach for May 31st, 2025.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it is Saturday morning. It is time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there, the one and only Jim Cullison from TheAverageGuy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be with you on a Saturday morning. You know what? We missed the happy Memorial Day last week.
We did. You know what else we missed?
What?
Your birthday.
Oh, we did. Yes.
It is your birthday. So happy birthday, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
If you go to out to Ask the Podcast Coach and you click on, I want to say support, there's a button there where you can, there's a Jim button there. So if you want to send Jim some cash, there is a button to do that. So, but we should.
Appreciate you coming out and listening. Oh, yeah, that's what we appreciate.
And did you get anything special for your birthday?
Oh, well, the kids came over on Sunday. We had a good time. With that. And yeah, you know what? This year, my wife, actually, you can see one of them in the screen here. She made some pictures. Remember these things that right there?
Yeah.
Remember these things? That's me with our old cat. Remember those things that you'd print out, or you'd drop off a little film thing, and then you'd go pick up an envelope full of these paper things that had pictures on them. I don't know what they are. But she had some of those printed, and we framed those up, and so yeah, it was good, very, very good birthday. So thanks for the wishes.
There you go, and thanks to all of our servicemen. I've always, if I get this right, I think Memorial Day is where we remember those who are no longer with us.
Correct. Yeah.
Veterans Day, Veterans Day is more like, hey, thanks for those who are with us and keeping us, in theory, safe. And
exactly, it's exactly. They do get mixed up all the time. Although, Dave, I did have a dream last night that I was back in the military, and I was trying to get in processed, and I showed up at the barracks, and I was like, hey, yeah, and then I realized I don't have a single uniform. How am I going to do this? And then I woke up. Isn't that crazy? Those are crazy.
Or if you had one, would it fit? That would be my whole thing. I was playing with an app today or yesterday. It's a health thing, and it has you kind of strip down to your skivvies and take a side angle view. Oh, that was not pretty. That was like, wow. Oh, that was, yeah, okay. But you know what'll give you the energy to get up and exercise? That's right. A nice piping hot cup of Java there. And that, of course, is brought to you by the Coffee Pour, is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. Look, it's the only place to go if you want to look good. He will make artwork for you, but he'll do more than that. He'll do a whole website. And the beautiful part of Mark is that he will sit down with you one-on-one. And look, he's the marketing guy. Point him at your website. He'll want to know what your show's about, what your vibe maybe kind of is, just so that everything is in alignment. He's been podcasting since 2013. That's the other thing. You're not going to get from some other graphic artist. They're going to be like, a pod what? Oh, is that thing on YouTube? No, Mark knows what a podcast is. He's been doing it since 2013. 30 years in the design field as well, and he's going to make you look amazing. Remember, they got to see you before they hear you. And when it comes time to looking great, there's only one place to go, and that is podcastbranding.co. Tell him Dave and Jim sent you.
And of course, big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there at based on a true story podcast.com. You know, as I'm looking at his site right now, he has a request an episode button, which is kind of cool. I mean, think about getting some feedback from your audience. You've got a movie that you like, I wonder how it says it's based on a true story, but is it really? You can head over to his site. All the way to the right, there is a tab. I'm wondering why it's not showing up. I think you got to scroll. Dave, I think we can't see that because it's off to the right there. That's not showing on the screen, but
it's
you
still
can check it out today.
It's a good looking site.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. You can see the latest episode, Beyond the True Story, Not a Real Enemy with Robert Wolf. You can request an episode. Check it out today. Look at that artwork there. Isn't that cool? Based on a true story podcast.com. Dan, as always, thank you for your sponsorship.
And one of the things I thought we would do today is somebody had asked a question about social media. And I've always kind of said social media, the more I look into it, it's not that it's a waste of time. It's a great way. To me, I'm starting to think of it like a commercial for your show. It's something that reminds you. I remember there's a TV show here in the U.S. called The Conners. And it just went off the air. They had their big finale thing. It used to be Roseanne back in the day. And I saw so many commercials where it was like, the final episode of The Conners is coming up and blah, blah, blah. And Tracker, there's another TV show that every time I turn on TV, they're reminding me to watch Tracker, which coincidentally, I just found out is the number 3 show, I guess, on CBS or whatever. So that promotion helps. And I think that's kind of what social media is. It like, well, I'll give you an example. So I was like, So I thought what I would do this morning is I tried to step out of me and go look at what I do when I do social. So for me, I'm still, whatever you want to call it. I know there's some really bad things on X, but for me, a lot of my audience is still there, and it's hard for me to walk away from however many thousands of people are following me. So I start to scroll down and I see a picture of Doug Pinnick from King's X, which is fun because I'm wearing a King's X shirt today. Henry Winkler doesn't like carrot cake. These are the valuable things you're learning. Adam Curry was live yesterday, but there was this thing. Daniel J. Lewis had said, hey, I might be changing my opinion on having episode numbers at the beginning of the show title. And so I replied, I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. And then I was scrolling down. I see where Tom Rossi from Buzzsprout is at some conference, but I'm still scrolling. I'm like, I'd stop to talk to Daniel because Daniel's a great friend of mine and I love everything he does. And I'm scrolling down and I'm like, okay, I see Doug's going to be playing bass for somebody. And I'm scrolling and somebody went to bed before 10. Okay. And then there's Chris from Podtastic and I'm scrolling and nothing's really catching my eye. And then I'm like, okay, about this time, normally I would be gone. But then I see Matt Kundle, and I'm like, oh, I like Matt. And then, but he's talking about something, some guy's teaching English, and I'm like, nope. Then I see Rob Greenlee. Rob Greenlee's talking about video, and I was like, okay, am I going to watch that there, though? No, but I might go over and watch that later. And then finally, when I get down here, because of course there's some political stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, Joe Rogan interviewed Bono. And that's when I stopped, because A, it's probably 3 hours of Bono. I love U2. I don't love Bono. That's kind of why I wanted to hear it, because Bono can be kind of I don't know, he's got opinions that I don't always agree. And then it's 3 hours of that. And I'm hoping that it's going to be an interesting conversation. And you never know with Joe. Sometimes Joe has, but that was one that stopped the scroll. I was like, oh, because I don't even subscribe to Joe Rogan. When that happens, if somebody says, oh, did you hear, so-and-so, like there's a really funny British comedian that laughs really weird. I forget his name, but he was on because he has a new show out. And I watched about 15 minutes of that and went, yeah, no. But Bono made me stop the scroll. So with that said, if you want people to stop the scroll, you got to have something that I can't get anyplace else. I can't get, Jimmy Fallon's not doing a 3-hour interview with Bono. It just, to me, that was like, okay. So the things there that made me stop were my friends doing something interesting, and it was a conversation. It wasn't like Daniel wasn't like, go listen to my episode. He was actually being social on social media. But the thing that made me like, oh, I am going to go listen to that later. So again, it's a commercial coming this week on Joe Rogan, Bono, So I don't know. To me, that's where you'll notice if I were to go back and look, probably 80% of that I just scrolled on by. And so that's what people are doing. Some people call it doom scrolling because a lot, like we saw, there was a thing there with Elon Musk, and I'm sure there was plenty of activity on that. But as I was scrolling, most of it, I'm just like, yep, okay, yep. And then I see the one thing, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then, so I don't know, thoughts, Jim? Is that what you do on social?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm doing less and less. Personally, I'm doing less and less social all the time. But at work, at Gallup, we have been trying out a bunch of different things. And there's been some conventional wisdom, get these short videos out there and about people, want to hear people and the words, words coming up on the screen. And none of that performed very well for us. It was like, maybe we're doing it wrong. Who knows? But we threw it out there and tested it and measured it. And I guess the point of this is do social, have some metrics behind it. I mean, if you enjoy doing it, if it's fun for you, just keep doing it. Like, do it the way you want to do it. If you enjoy it, if you're doing it to, to get an effect, get an ROI, if you need to do it for your job or whatever, it'd be great to probably have some metrics of tracking these. How is it working? How are people engaging? What are they doing? We made a decision to move away from that, from that voice content, and are going to just popping the words up on the screen, and those were performing a lot better. So I'm with you. I think the best social we get is one-on-one conversations with real people. Like I had built these big groups, and they had gotten a little squirrely on me. Like the groups kind of, you get these big groups, then you got to start doing some heavy moderation because people are people, they start doing, different things or
oh yeah.
We had some problems with just outright advertising in our groups. Like everybody was just advertising to everybody about everything. And you're like, guys, it's not a swap meet. Like, there's other places to go do that. Like, we're here for conversation. I switched my methodology last year to more individual one-on-one. Now that's hard. Like on LinkedIn, I have 22,000 connections now. And I try to interact with my customer as much as I can one-on-one. I love the group think, but man, groupthink can get away from you sometimes too.
Oh yeah.
Groups do terrible things when they get incited, right? So I'm changing. I have been changing my philosophy now to get to for more one-on-one. We'll see. It's so far so good, right? I mean, it's more work. It's a little more work, but those one-on-one conversations are a little more engaging, right? In that, and they're a little more helpful. And I don't have, we see this all the time in the podcast space. Somebody asks a question, 3 of the answers are more confusing than the
Yes.
person who is asking the question, right? And then there's always agendas tied to them, and everybody's asking any podcast group, where should I host? Do people still ask that question in groups?
Oh,
I
I saw it this morning. Yeah. It's like, I'm thinking of doing this. Does anybody? And what's always weird is it's like, should I use Podbean or, Mike's House of Hosting, like somebody you've never heard of? And I'm like, that's not even like for me, my top, like, So that's always kind of fun. Chris from castahead.net says, stop the scroll. One of the benefits of the first 3 seconds of your video or the thumbnail image on YouTube. Yep, absolutely. Because I know on YouTube TV, on my TV, when I kind of go to the next thing, and I haven't clicked I want to watch the video, it'll start playing quite a bit of it. And I can figure out, do I want to watch this or not? And then the amazing Jeff C. totally, he says, I also think Dave hit on something really important. Your friends, community is going to be even more important with the rise of AI. Absolutely. The AI thing, speaking of YouTube, every time I look for anything on YouTube, it's just that AI voice zooming in on pictures from Amazon. And I'm like, I want an actual person holding the product. One other thing I should throw in, since we're talking about social and where this came from, 2 things. This one, let me share my screen here real quick. I'll read this. It says, I've been podcasting since 2019 and truly enjoy it. So let's just stop there. You're having fun. Let's not overlook that. As it's a passion project, I've had little growth, but I put literally no effort into marketing or growth. So let's look at that sentence. I've had little growth, but I put no effort into growth. So we've kind of answered that question. I find guests that I find fascinating, reach out and book discussions. I do it all myself, including all audio and video editing. I started a YouTube channel a while ago. I'll stop there. This week on the School of Podcasting, I'm interviewing Thomas Umstadt Jr., just because it's fun to say Umstadt. Can you have a more German name? I love that. And he's an audio guy that started a YouTube channel, and he's sharing the insights. So that's coming up on the School of Podcasting. But in this case, Dude Vizzle says, I started a YouTube channel a while ago and push out clips and full episodes out to the channel from my show feeds. My dream is to grow just enough to monetize, just enough to pay someone to be my social media and marketing manager, slicing up clips, publishing them every other day or so on all social platforms. I have no interest in doing that myself. Well, for the record, castahead.net will do that for you. I have no interest in doing that myself. If someone has recommendations, please share. But I just thought it was interesting that we lost Jim. Well, that was interesting. I saw that and I was like, well, what happened to Jim? And I was like, he's not there. Jim's not here, Dave. Jim's not here. And so I thought that was kind of interesting that his goal there was, I really need social. And that's fine. Social is a great place to be social. But on the other hand, it's in terms of growth, we haven't really seen that. The other thing I thought I would talk about when it comes to social is my buddy Satoris, a member of the School of Podcasting, and he's back. And do I have to assign you now? No, you're back. Okay. Is another thing about social, Jim, that just came out this week. I talked to him last night because of that whole unlimited consulting thing that I do. Satoris over at The Voice of Greece, he's just started this podcast. And he said something that was really like, I guess there was a volcano or something happened in Greece. And somebody said, well, why didn't they move the people? And he said, well, on the beaches and stuff, they don't have sirens. That's not the way it works in Greece. It's not there. So he was giving kind of boots on the ground, kind of, knowledge. And for some reason, unbeknownst to him or me, he lost his channel on Twitter. Like they just banned him, blocked him, no kind of appeal. And he's just like, and he had thousands of people following on him forever. So be careful when you're, putting your group on Facebook, because I know Paul G lost 84,000 people on Facebook. And I was like, what's weird is I still don't get why Paul rebuilt his group on Facebook. I'm like, Paul, what are you doing? Let me introduce you to Heartbeat.
I tried to move. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
My back. I tried to move my group off Facebook one time. And
Yeah.
like, hey, we're thinking of changing. And it was like a revolt. Like, you're not changing me. Like, don't even think about moving. So, depending on the demographic, I think, of your audience as well, we're mostly, 45 to 65 ladies dominate for sure in our group. They're it's like, I don't want another place to go. I think we're going to eventually have to move. I can't see this long term. I've got some things going on to try and maybe build a group internally, or because I can't. I just don't want to go into another platform,
right?
Okay, so it's not Facebook. Then what are we moving to? And then, it's just another platform.
Well, the thing that got me is on this show, I said I really would like to close down my Facebook group because I don't trust Facebook. I've already been kicked out of my own Facebook group once. Don't really want to go through that again. And when I said that, somebody heard that on the show and went over to the Facebook group and said, hey, everybody, we need to start posting over here because Dave's going to close this down. And I'm like, no, that's the direct opposite of what I want. I want people to go over to Heartbeat because I've had people say, it's another app. I go, it's also a website. You don't need to install the app, And for me, when you move your group, I remember when, I want to say Don Miller, but that's not right. He does 38 Days to the Work You Love. I have to look up his name. That's going to drive me nuts. Maybe it's Dan Miller, and Don Miller is the guy. Yeah, Don Miller. We'll figure it out later. This is why you don't do a live show. But anyway, Dan Miller, I'm pretty sure that's it, moved his group from Facebook to, something. I think he used Mighty Networks. And he said he lost like 60% of his group. He goes, but the people that were there were really, really there. Like they were there to do that and they were engaged. And he said it was a much better group. It was just much smaller. But that's a huge ego hit to lose, 70% of your group.
Yeah.
It's like, ouch.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, the chat room's saying I'm a little low. I think before the show and monkeying around with my settings, maybe they got turned down a little bit.
Okay. I have turned you up and I'm turning me down a little. There
we go.
Yeah. So we should thank you for that.
Stop bossing me around.
Yeah. Yes. We've Dan Miller is 38 Days to the Work You Love. Don Miller is Story Brand. Thank you, Dan, for that. I appreciate that. And Brad. Jeff C says free versus paid group makes a difference. People are more open to moving if they paid for the content. Yep, that's absolutely true. And then the one and only, hey, Ralph, I don't know when you showed up. We did a big shout out for you at the beginning of this and your new show, Grit and Growth Business. He says, that's why I'm going to create a community of my own, just not willing to pay the $28,000 for a community that was the private label cost I was quoted yesterday. Only $28,000. That's all. Buy one, get one free, maybe? I don't know. Holy cow. That's, anytime you do white labeled stuff, because I know there's a white labeled version of Heartbeat and it's not cheap. So, that's kind of tricky. The other thing, I have a clip, there's a guy named Rick Beato. And if you go to the YouTubes and search for Dave Gilmour, won't come on my show. Now, Rick Beato has millions of subscribers. He's got billions, I say with a B, of views now. And what I loved about it is if you Google that, if you search on YouTube, Rick Beato, and Beato is Beato, Rick Beato, Dave Gilmour, you see the video from 8 months ago that says, Dave Gilmour, by the way, is the lead guitar player of Pink Floyd, won't come on my show. And then you'll see in the also in the same search results, you will see where Dave Gilmour came on his show 2 months after that video. But if people talk about, I know we all talk about, especially in the U.S., the nighttime talk shows, the Jimmys, right? The Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, the other guy from Comedy Central that I can't remember. Who is that guy on CBS? See, I don't even watch it. I can see he has jet black hair. Anyway, but again, he's left such an impression on me. And he got really, both he and Kimmel got really, really political.
Seth Meyers?
Nope, Seth Meyers is on later. Man, he's got black horn-rimmed glasses. I can see his face.
Colbert.
Colbert, yes. Colbert, yeah. And so, so anyway, this is Rick Beato. Now, this is kind of a long clip. So Jim and I are going to stare at each other awkwardly as we listen to this. But he's explaining, because he said he had Sting on his YouTube podcast on his channel. And he got more views of that interview than because Sting has also been on the Jimmys and on Colbert. And if you add all their views together, they don't even come close to the views of Sting on his channel. And this is him explaining why, in this case, he's saying how YouTube is outperforming TV. And I would just say this is why podcasts are better than TV.
So what's the difference between Sting being on my channel and Sting being on Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, or Jimmy Kimmel? Well, first of all, I know Sting's entire catalog. I know all the Police records. I know all his solo records. I know who produced the records. I know who engineered the records. I know the songs on them. I know how to play the songs. When he brought Dominic Miller with him to the interview, I had no idea that Dominic was coming with him until he showed up. That didn't freak me out. I know that Dominic joined the band in 1990. I knew the whole history of him being in the band. He came on the Soul Cages record. He came in. He's been playing with Sting ever since. In addition, I interviewed Dominic here later on. That video has 2.5 million views.
I'm going to pause this a second. Notice how he's getting really passionate about this. His voice is like, look, this is the...
When I interview people, I talk about their music, and that's it. I don't get into personal stuff. I'm not interested in that. I'm talking about things and asking questions related to the things that they know. First-person accounts of their songwriting, of the way they recorded their records, all these things, how they write melodies, all the things that I ask, what instruments they played on there, who produced, how long did it take to write the song, how long did it take to record it, how far apart did the people stand? Like when I interviewed Ron Carter, when you did a Miles session, how far apart did you guys stand from each other? Did you rehearse for it? What's the difference between playing with McCoy Tyner or Herbie Hancock on the piano? What's the difference between playing with Elvin Jones or Tony Williams? Ron Carter is the only person really that can answer those questions. And these are the ones that I ask.
So
what's the difference?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Rick. He's a musician. He's a producer, really talented musician, by the way. The guy can play some serious guitar. He makes money from his YouTube channel by selling his own products. Now I'm sure he gets, he's getting billions of views. So he's getting his, whatever his, low CPM is, but he doesn't have sponsors on the show.
He's getting 2 nickels.
Yeah. But I love the fact that the other thing is he chooses the guests. I forget who I was listening to, but they were talking about being on Letterman and how something happened in their first segment, and how sometimes the guest will lean over and Dave will say something and you can't hear it because they're already going to commercial. And basically Dave was just like, it doesn't matter. We're going to ask the questions on the card, and it's no. And I've heard Craig Ferguson explained that one of the things that really burnt him out was he had to interview people he had no yearning to interview at all. It's like, here, you're going to interview the new pop princess, Sabrina, what's her name? And she's going to come out in a mini top and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't care. I don't care about this person. So Rick has had people on his channel, and it's people he wants to talk to. And I think that makes a big difference too. So I say that because I saw a thing in Reddit that somebody was talking about having big guests. And Chris says, Beato's interviews are incredible for music nerds. That's it. It's who's his audience? Music nerds, musicians. Rick Rubin, he said, actually interviewed him, which was also great. Yeah, and Rick will do, like, there are some people that are like so big shot smarty pants that you have to go to their house to interview them. And so Rick Beato went to Rick Rubin's house and interviewed him. But it's and you get stuff that you just don't get in other interviews. One of my favorite quotes ever was, there's a band called Extreme. They have a really amazing guitar player. The guy's name is Nuno Betancourt. And Nuno was talking about meeting Eddie Van Halen. And every guitar player kind of wants to sound like Eddie Van Halen. And Nuno definitely has the talent to play like Eddie Van Halen. But he said, I still, I'm tweaking the equipment, trying to get it to sound just like Eddie. And he said, I finally got asked to go to his studio. And he goes, and there's Eddie sounding like Eddie, being Eddie, like there's the guitar there. Holy cow, it's Eddie Van Halen. And Eddie goes, hey, I'm trying to tweak something. Can you do me a favor? Can you play my guitar? And he goes, oh, I'm finally going to sound like Eddie Van Halen. I don't believe it. And he goes, and I put on the guitar and I hit a couple chords and I start playing. And he goes, crap, I still sound like me. And that's where it's in the hands, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to guitar players. And so when I say it's not the gear, it's not the gear. And I was like, that's a great example of that. And so, Randy says I enjoyed his Brad Paisley interview. So also, it's really belated now, but Randy just had a birthday not too long ago. I was checking out Leaning Towards Wisdom, and I was catching up, and I was like, oh, I missed his birthday. So
ironically, we all have them every year.
We do. So in fact,
keep coming around.
There's probably somebody right now that like, yeah, mine happened 11 months ago. So yeah, it does keep coming.
It keeps coming around.
But this person was kind of saying that I guess Pat Flynn has announced, or somehow I kind of pop in and out of Pat Flynn, passive income, smart passive income. And Pat has kind of said, I probably in an interview, that he's not really going for the quote big guests. He's going for the interviews, the like who has the interesting topics, not who has the biggest following, because, in some cases, not so much in podcasting, but the people that have the biggest following may not have the coolest story or the best content for your audience, or et cetera, et cetera. And so he's more about finding interesting people that can bring value to his audience, not so much, oh, they were on the cover of Time magazine or whatever. Although, and that definitely has its place, because it's cool to say, I had, Dave Gilmour on my show, but if Dave is kind of boring, then, in the end, like I've had Pat Flynn on my show. I've had John Lee Dumas, but the one that people talk about is Glenn the Geek. That's why that guy's been back 5. Not that John and Pat didn't deliver great value, but some of the stuff that Glenn said really got them, going, and they're like, wait, how did he do that again? And that whole 9 yards, and, and all really Glenn said was,
don't be boring.
Yeah. And so, keep that in mind when it comes to interviews. I just interviewed a guy named Tracy Johnson on the School of Podcasting. If you go over there now, schoolofpodcasting.com/episodes, you'll see it. And he had a criteria. And that was 1, are they known? B, kind of, are they interesting, or do they have an interesting topic? Then B, can they have the interesting topic come out of their mouth? Because there are people that are absolutely brilliant, but just can't talk about it. And I was like, that's kind of a cool criteria. because you can have somebody with great content, and as long as they have great content and they can get it out of their mouth, it doesn't really matter if they're known or not. But and he said you can kind of get away with it if they're known, and they can, they're entertaining, they can talk. But if they don't have great content, he goes, you got to work at that. So it's one of those, when you have like 2 out of 3, you got to put in some elbow grease, as my grandma used to say, to really get that to go. Have you had anybody? I know you interview all sorts of people on Home Gadget Geeks. Have you ever interviewed somebody that wasn't quite a household name that really just, brought the goods?
Well, I shoot for community. So I probably have a list of, I probably have a list of 10 or 12 folks that I kind of roll through and have on the show once a quarter or so. And then there's a few who maybe they're on twice a year, or some are on once a year. Kind of depends on their schedule and what they want to do. Jeff C in our chat room, he's been on before. I try to take advantage of the in the gadget space, it's changing all the time, right? So, it was hot last year, it's not hot anymore, and nobody wants to talk about it. So I try to kind of, as people are into things, or they've really gotten into some kind of gadget, I try to capture that right then, right? And then I also have a group of folks who I just say, hey, when you have something interesting to say, call me. Like, let's get you on. And that just happened this morning. I had a guest who I have on maybe every other year, and I just say to him, hey, when you're ready, just ping me. He's a great guest, super smart, PhD. And I just say, when you're ready, you just ping me. And I've had folks where I haven't had them in a year or two, and I ping them and say, you want to come on? And they're like, I got nothing. Like, no, I appreciate that. They're like, yeah, no, I don't have anything to do. So for me, and then every once in a while, like last week, I interviewed Doug Milburn from 45 Drives, which in the home lab, home server storage, hard drive space they're doing some interesting things in that space. They're kind of a name there, right? And he was a super interesting, super interesting interview for me. I was chatting with Ed Sullivan on Sunday, and I was like, what'd you think? He's like, I'm just not interested in it. And so there is that, you're not going to hit it with everybody all the time. And it's
right.
Not, the more of a niche you go into, the less people who are actually going to listen to it, regardless of how interesting it is, by the way. Like, I have no interest in these music interviews that this guy that you're talking about earlier, it's great that he's asking all these details. I couldn't care less about any of them. I just don't. Jay Franzi, who's been on my show a bunch, and he's sometimes out in chat. Jay also is in the music space, and he's like, oh yeah, I've interviewed, Pat Benatar, and he starts rattling off all these names, right? And you're like, well, that's super cool, but I'm still not interested in anything they have to say. I couldn't really care what Pat Benatar is saying about anything at this point, right? That's not saying anything about her. I'm just not interested in those kind of topics. So I think, I think this all comes back around, one, making sure you're not like with a guest philosophy, making sure you're not moving the needle so far and so fast every week, where it's, and I might be guilty of this on Home Gadget Geeks, where one week it's this topic, it's topic A, and then the next week it's not topic B, it's topic Z, all the way on the other end of the spectrum, right? And you could be sending your listeners into a little bit of shock, right? Doesn't take but a couple times where they hit play, they hear the topic, like, nah, they move on to their next podcast. Couple times doing that, and they may not come back. How do you know you're doing that? You don't. It's just one of these things. You got to kind of have your ear to the ground for the feedback that you're getting and from your listeners and such. So from Dave, from guest selection, the way we do that, I'd rather have guests that my audience knows. That's why I go through this repeating, 10 or 12 or 15 people set, because my audience knows them, and oh, hey, Aaron Lawrence is going to be on. Yeah, I want to listen to that one because Aaron brings some interesting stuff, right? I want those guests to have some name recognition in the space, in my listener space. So that's what's important to me.
Yeah. Dan says content first, in my opinion, and then find the expert. Yep. Todd the Gator says we interview our community because it's right there in our show. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's about. In fact, Jeff C says, I like to interview people who I think will provide value to my audience. I don't really care how big they are. Yeah, that's for me, the line is, it's not the size of the guest that brings the value. It's the size of the value that makes the guest, so
I like it because they're just nice to me, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it's great for my audience and stuff, but I love interviewing, Dan Lefebvre's been on the podcast a couple times. Dan's a great interview. I like Dan. Dan is kind to me. Like, that means if I'm going to spend 90 minutes doing this, I don't want to interview some, I've interviewed a couple big name, on the Gallup side of things, and they changed, you get last minute schedule changes. Oh, we can't get Robert there to, at this time. Can you move it to this? I'm like, well, we kind of advertise the live show. They're like, well, it doesn't matter. It's this or nothing. I've had them do the bait and switch where they're like, oh yeah, you're going to get this guy. And then you get a couple days out and you're like, oh, this guy's no longer available. Can we serve you up this guy? The new, right? And you're like, oh, come on. So I like it. Listen, if you're on my show, it's because you're my friend. And so I always appreciate the folks who come on and give their, 90 minutes to be on the show. That's what I like. I'm not running and gunning for the big names. I've done that, and they never turn out very well. It's just like, that wouldn't be, personally, I don't like that. Now, there are podcast hosts who know how to handle that kind of talent, know how to get that done. I think Jay Franzi is one of those. Jay knows how to do it. He's gotten some big names on his podcast. He knows he's willing to put up with their shenanigans and knows how to handle talent. He's been in that space. He kind of understands. I don't have time for that. I'm just like, no, if you're going to do that, I don't have time for you. That's a preference thing, by the way. That's not an either or. That's a preference. No, I guess it is an either or, but it's a preference thing. What do you like?
Well, I had a thing it's been going back and forth for a couple of weeks, and I'm hoping I didn't blow it in a way, but I was contacted by Audacity, the actual software, and they're like, would you like to talk to so-and-so? And I go, oh, that would be interesting. I said, I would love to know, like, how do you guys, like, why did you buy a company that is free? Like, that's kind of weird. And they brought up that originally there was something in the terms that made people a little nervous. Like, it was going to be, spyware is too strong a word, but it was like they were going to have, and they're like, we changed that immediately. I'm like, oh, great. And they're like, it's also, I said I would ask about this, and they're like, okay. And I said, but I'm not quite sure, like, what are we going to talk about? Because I don't want it to be just a giant commercial for Audacity. And I said, would you be open to a pre-interview? And they went back and forth. They're like, well, is this pre-interview off the record? And I go, yeah, it's just, I'm trying to make sure I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste my time. And they're like, great. And then we kind of went back and forth on some questions. And I said, also keep in mind, I'm primarily an audio show. The School of Podcasting is primarily just audio. I have a video channel, but it's not a case where I'm recording this and putting it out as a video podcast. It's audio. And at that point they went, yeah, never mind. And I was like, okay. Cause I wasn't feeling it. I was just like, I go, and I said, but they said they had some new stuff coming down the pike. I go, please, I'm a fan of Audacity. I didn't tell them I don't use it, but I was like, I'm a fan. I know a lot of people use it. And anytime you have new features, let me know. I'll be more than happy to announce them and blah, blah, blah. And I have a course at the School of Podcasting about Audacity. Hint, hint, hint. Hey guys, you want to promote my stuff? But it was just one of those where in the end, it just wasn't as the old saying goes, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no, and it was like, it's just, I can't really, if we're going to be talking about features, yeah, you can kind of talk about them without showing them, but it probably makes a whole lot more, a better impact if you show somebody how it works, depending on what the scenario was. But that was one where I was just kind of like, well, let's make sure we're a good fit. And you kind of go back and forth. And in the end, they were probably thinking, yeah, this guy doesn't do video, so this isn't a great fit for us. And for me, it was like, my audience really wants to know how to grow their audience and tools and stuff. And I talk about you guys on a regular basis. You're something I recommend. And so they might have just thought, well, this guy's already talking about us. Why do we need to spend our time? But so it's wasn't entirely awkward, but it was just kind of like, yeah, let's not do that. Never mind. So, and I figure I saved my audience. So
yeah, that was probably it was a good call. When you get that spidey sense and you're like,
yeah,
I've gotten that spidey sense and I went ahead with it and I've always regretted it. You're like, oh, I should have said no to that one, type deal. Yeah.
Well, I had a pre-interview where I had approached somebody and they said they were looking for podcasters that run a business. And I was like, hey, that's me, and then in the pre-interview, they pitched me so hard on, they're really looking for clients. And I was like, cause she's kind of a business coach. And I was like, oh, I see. This is, okay. So we'll see. I doubt that I'm going to get chosen, but it was like, oh, okay.
Well, so in that area, right, when you start getting pitched to, when people start coming to you and they start, like, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, first of all, big red flag always goes up when someone comes to me and says, I want to be on your podcast. Generally, there's a pitch involved in that. And then, yeah, I have to kind of remind oftentimes those clients that this isn't the audience to pitch to. Like,
right.
Everybody that listens is doing what you're doing. You're pitching to the wrong, like you're singing to the choir, right? But there's this, in the current business coaching space, and it's valid, get on as many podcasts as you can, get out there and get your message out. No podcast is a waste of time. Do every interview you can get your hands on. But I do need to at some point protect my audience from another pitch. They're also doing that kind of thing. It'd be like you having, another podcast coach on your, like, and they come on and pitch their stuff and you're like, well, it's kind of what I do.
Well,
right?
I did that. I had because I've been using Podmatch. So they send these shows that are kind of, supposed to fit me. Well, many of them, I'm their competition.
Right.
And so I went over and did my homework and listened to it and, that whole 9 yards. And I said, I see where I am in the same kind of genre as you. If you'd rather talk more about my book than the School of Podcasting, I'm completely open. And then I said, and I'm completely open to a pre-interview if because there's some people, like, I've had other podcast consultants on the School of Podcasting, but it's because they have either something that I didn't know or something like that. And I've also kind of vetted them. Like if this happened, I've had multiple members of the School of Podcasting go, this looks kind of spammy. And they'll forward me an email. And if you're a podcast consultant that is spamming podcasters, shame on you, because we all get enough spam. We hate spam, and you're spamming podcasters. Like, you're not coming on my show, like, ever. Like, that's your no. So I usually vet them, and I'm also not the other thing that's interesting is, like, I'm not I will interview you if you interview me. I'm like, I don't think, because that's not always a good fit. You know what I mean? If you're a podcast about, whatever, soccer, and you're all about how to help your kids coach. Well, that's the Coach Dave, right? Talks about coaching soccer, right? Well, he might come on my show because he has this cool strategy that help people grow his audience. But my audience isn't interested in how to coach soccer. You know what I mean? So like and likewise, so he'll be a good guest for me. We could talk about how he grew his audience. I'm not a good guest for him because I don't know a thing about coaching kids in soccer. So the whole like, oh, let's do an interview swap. I'm like, that doesn't always work.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tricky. Dan says, does Audacity do video? It's interesting that an audio software wasn't a fan of, wasn't a fan of that. I'm not sure what. I think they just, I might have offended them. They're like, why does this guy keep asking questions? Don't you know we're Audacity? I'm like, I honestly don't know. I didn't get that vibe, but it wasn't an instant click. Randy says we could have played clips of the whole interview. Sure, that's that. What am I doing? What did I say about that's? Todd the Gator said, is anyone else
I was trying to think
getting Monty Python in their head? The knights that say, nee! Yes. I'm not dead yet. So that is coming around.
You don't get blocked on YouTube.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. I thought this was an interesting, I have this cute thing I can do now. We're moving on to a new topic. Ooh. And that is, I thought this was kind of heartwarming in a way. She says, I recently moved back to my hometown after living 30 years out of state. My first cousin never left and was her sick mom's primary caregiver for years. When the end was creeping near, my cousin confided in me that she wasn't sure what would become of her after her mom passed and she no longer had a daily purpose. Now I'm thinking of The Jerk. I found my special purpose. I told her that when the time came, we'd start a podcast together because we're both pretty funny gals. Her mom passed on Christmas Eve. Man, that sucks. I mean, your mom passing sucks anyway, but oh man. I gave her some time to mourn, as one does. She's still struggling, so for Mother's Day, my husband bought me the Mayano 2-person podcast kit and told me to follow through on my promise. That leads me to now. We have a loose promise. I have the setup. We're both still funny dorks. We even have a name. That's good. I would say go Google that name. Make sure nobody else is using it. My husband helped me out with the audio with audio.com, which I think is an Audacity thing. And we've begun recording. I don't know what you'd call it. Test runs? Yes. Do test runs. Lots of them, please. Beyond that, I'm floundering. I don't know. I don't want to let my cousin down. She needs this. Any advice or links to helpful walkthroughs would be fantastic. I don't know how much time to devote to combing the web. So if you know of anything that can condense the learning curve, I'd be super grateful. So the first thing I would say was, if you need a media host, Captivate.fm, or go to supportthisShow.com/Captivate. But the thing I loved about this is the fact that podcasting doesn't always have to be about making money and promoting a business. It's just two people having fun. And that's, I guess, what kind of got me on that particular one. And I go back to the guy that contacted me that said he was going to kill himself, but he heard me say that sometimes starting a podcast can give you a purpose. And he ended up not killing himself and started a Master Cauldron, started his podcast about his hobby. So, keep that in mind. So here we go. Boy, talk about sometimes people have their own show. I have no idea what the chat room is talking about today.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
What is this you guys are speaking of? I see where Ralph is saying I have about 200 listeners a day.
Go up a little bit. I think his question said he did a name change for his main show.
Oh, yeah.
How long should I play a pre-roll for people about the name change? And so the question is really, when do you think 80% of your listeners have actually listened to a show? So of those 200, let's see what his answer was. 200. I have about 200 listeners a day for a daily show. So when you think about the numbers, like when have 80% of what you think are your subscribers or your main audience, when have they consumed it? Is it consumed within 3 days? Is it consumed within a week?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a slower roll kind of thing where they, You think maybe it's taking a week. I think that kind of dictates that pre-roll strategy. Let's just say most consume 80% consume it within a week. I would run it for 2 and then be done with it, right? Put it in there, get it. You want to overshoot it a little bit, but you don't want it to go too long. If you think it's 3 days, I'd run it for a week and be done with it, right? Type deal. The other strategy, Ralph, would be run it for a week, then run it once a week, maybe like on Fridays for a month, so that they get, for folks who are really far behind and may just be catching those, they're embedded in there, as well. If you had some semblance like, hey, this is evergreen content, I would people are listening to it sporadically and it's going to be evergreen, I would spread those announcements out maybe over a course of a month. So maybe not every day, maybe every third day, so that you're sprinkling them in just as you're trying to catch people. Shouldn't be forever. I don't know if I do it more than a month. You're a daily show. That's a lot of chances for people to hear those things. I've been listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast, and they have this really obnoxious commercial that Reba McEntire does, and I cannot hit fast forward enough to get past that commercial, right? So you don't want to annoy them, you don't want to, annoy them with that. But I think that's the number. I don't know if we can say a hard number on that. Look at your audience, look at the bubble, see how many days that you think they're going to be out there. If it's more evergreen, it should probably be less frequent but longer, and make a call. I don't think you can go too wrong on that.
Yeah, especially on a daily show, because I'm with you. There is when I make my breakfast, I go out and I ask the woman in the tube to play the local sports channel on the radio, and there's this little intro music, and it's about some financial thing that I would have paid. I would have been making payments for 34 years if it wasn't for such and such and such and such. And now I'm, debt free or whatever. And I'm like, do you not have other commercials? Like, did the sales guys, they could only sell one? Because every time they go to break, it's there's this little music, and I'm just like, no, and there's no way to fast forward. It's a live radio thing. And I'm like, oh, it's so annoying. So I would, I know for churches, they say if you want somebody to really hear a message, you have to say it 3 weeks in a row, because not everybody comes every week. So I'm with Jim. I think I would sprinkle it in for a daily show, because that could get really annoying. And then no longer than a month, probably a couple weeks. And then, like you said, then turn it on and then turn it off. Because otherwise, if it's every day, you're like, hey, because they're going to be like, I know, you've told me 14 times now. So... well,
you could do it like a backup strategy, every day for a week, once a week for a month, and then maybe once a month for 6 months, right? Yeah. And just kind of sprinkle that in. That way, everybody kind of hears it. You get the opportunity. Your most avid daily listeners are going to get tired of it, but they're also not tired of your content, so they're going to probably put up with it a little bit longer than your sporadic users. I like that for that kind of series. I like that. Like, every day for a week, every week for a month, every month for 6 months.
And then I have an episode that's named when we, like the one where we changed our name. And it's just me going, hey, we're going to change our name, so that somebody's going through the back catalog and it's blah, blah, blah. And then there's the one where they changed their name, and then they go, why is the artwork different? Oh, I get it. So I always leave kind of a little breadcrumb for them to like, oh, that's what's going on. Jim, we haven't done this in a while.
And now, he's been waiting for this. It's time for Jim to get his nerd on.
Mr. Ranger 420, that's pretty funny. As I'm reading that, I'm like, oh, I know what that means. What laptop would be the best to start a new podcast with? I'm looking to get into podcasting and want a laptop/tablet and a mic that won't break the bank, but also help me get the ball rolling. Any suggestions would be lovely. What say you, Jim Collison?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Sooner than later, right now, with all with whatever's going on in our global tariff environment, right? You may want to make a poll on that. I think it's hard right now in the PC space. If you're going to go PC, and not go Mac, I think it's hard to go wrong with the mid range. It kind of depends on your budget, right? But between the 500 and 1,000 range for most podcasters, if you're not doing heavy video editing, you're going to be just fine in that space. You know, you want to make sure you get, if you're doing a lot of editing, the more hard drive space that you have, the better. You want to make sure it has ample ports available to it, whatever you're going to do. But it's in today's world with most modern processors, you know, in the Windows space, we've kind of gotten away from the really, really low end cheap processors for the most part. There's still a few out there in the budget space. You got to be careful of that. You want to get a modern processor that's got a little juice to it. You don't have to go with the highest one, Core i5, Core i7, Core i9, somewhere in there, right? But you know, I would say I'm going to change that, 750 to 1,000. If you want to splurge a little bit, you can go about 1,200. Get a really nice laptop. It's going to last you a while, especially if you're buying it now, right? It doesn't look like there's any Windows changes. You know, if this was a couple years ago, Windows made a change, right, where they had a TPM requirement and for an upgrade to Windows 11, and that's tripped a lot of people up. You could have bought a laptop then that didn't upgrade to Windows 11, which would have been a hassle. Today, we're kind of clear of all those things. So I think based on your budget, 750 is a nice spot to get in. Go up to 1,000 or 1,200 bucks. I'll be honest though, just go with the Mac. Right now, a little bit more expensive. You know, you and I both have minis.
Yeah.
If you don't have to go mobile, a Mac Mini is just a great podcasting tool, so to speak. I have an M4 now. I love it. The price was right. You know, again, you're in that $1,000 category, right? If you're going to go that, they're cheaper. They're advertised cheaper, but you can bulk them up just a little bit, so they, you know, you're right at that 750 to 1,000. So that for a lot of folks, if you're saying no to Mac, yeah, you can do the same thing on the PC side. But I think for podcasters, I love the Mini. Do not buy an iPad.
No,
that's not. Do not buy an iPad for podcasting. Right, you're going to need a full-fledged computer.
Dan says audio editing doesn't need a ton of power, and that's true.
No,
and that's where Leanne says it depends. If you're doing video, you're going to need space, but if you're depending only on audio, then you can get away with, 500 gigs or whatever.
I do video and I get away with 500 gig or with a half a terabyte. Yeah, 500 gigs on my Mac Mini. But I also have external storage that's me. I don't keep everything there, right? So the OS takes up half of that, and then I have about 200 gigs spare. Now I'm not doing 4K, and I'm not creating movies. That's not what I'm doing. I have a 90-minute podcast. I do video. I do it in 720, so it's smaller. Yeah, it's smaller. They're 8 gig files, but I'm smart about the management of keeping where I keep files. They sit on my desktop till I'm done. I delete what I don't need every week, and I move what I want to keep onto storage. And so that's taken care of. So you could, would I go with larger storage options for some? If you're bad at storage management or you don't have external storage, and you're going to just use the cloud as your backup, yeah, you probably want to go full terabyte and maybe 2. The problem on the Mac side with that is you pay a serious tax, Apple tax as we call it, for 2 terabytes. Like you're like, this shouldn't be that much. So probably 1 terabyte's the sweet spot on the Mac side. I did half, and it's just fine. That's just fine for me. Again, I do heavy management on that, so a lot of great. The M series. I think Dave in chat says Amazon's running a deal on the M4 Mac Mini for under $500. Just be careful, too cheap is bad too.
Oh, dude. I don't know who did it, but when they bought computers for my church, they didn't consult me, and they bought the next to the cheapest. Not the cheapest, but the one above. And it is painful. And I'm just trying to, log into a website. It's like, oh my goodness, I don't know what's in it, but two squirrels and a, chipmunk are the engine for that thing. It's ridiculous. And yeah, you got to be,
we lit up. Podtastic Audio says I upgraded to an M4 Mac Mini with full terabyte drive and 32 gig of RAM. That's a good. That's a really good upgrade there. And then Trent says, I record, edit, manage my pod. Oh, yeah, from you can.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Now, this is me. This is a preference thing, right? I mean, yes, you can. In the iPads in that M series have gotten some serious horsepower. I wouldn't. I don't. That makes me uncomfortable. This is a personal preference thing.
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. You've added a step to everything, because even now you can get the ATR 2100X, although that's being discontinued. If you didn't know that, the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X is being discontinued per the people at Buzzsprout. And if you've got a USB, like the mic I'm using right now, Rode Pod Mic USB-C to USB-C on an iPad, you could probably make it easy to record. But that's half the thing, is how do you get a microphone into an iPad? And then it's how do you get the files? Yeah. And then how do I get the files off the iPad into, and that's where sometimes uploading files, like if, off of an iPad, like you can't, it's just, it adds complexity.
You can't listen. It's a different way of thinking, Dave. We grew up in a PC era where you're thinking about OSs and files and file structures and moving those kinds of things around. In the new world, in the app space, like I don't take files off my iPhone. Like I do it. You think differently. So don't hear me say, the iPad OS is bad. You shouldn't do it that way. If it works for you, awesome, right? I'll retract that statement a little bit and say don't go with an iPad. There are some really good iPads out there, and if you're comfortable doing podcast processing and using the app model, if that's working for you, certainly the M series iPads are great. Like that chip is awesome, and so it'll do some great work for you. If you're comfortable with that, yeah, go down that route. I'm a PC guy and a Mac guy. I want a full OS. I want to be able to do some things with it the way I like to do it. So it's just a preference thing. It's good to clear that up.
Yeah. The other thing we should talk about is our awesome supporters. We love them. You can be an awesome supporter. In fact, one of my favorite awesome supporters, again, is my buddy Ralph over at gritandgrowthbusiness.com. If you're a small business owner, go check him out. He's got a few episodes out now, and he's been podcasting for a while now with the Ask Ralph show. But now, if you're ready to go in and take your business seriously, he's got transforming challenges into growth. That's his first episode, so you can be in there on the ground floor as he rolls out this show. Check him out again at gritandgrowthbusiness.com. And Ralph, thanks for being an awesome supporter. If you need more help, I don't know what's going on with my mouse right now. Holy cow, we'll just do it with a keyboard. The show is brought to you by the schoolofpodcasting.com, where we have courses. We have unlimited coaching. I was talking about how I was talking to Satiris last night about his Voice of Greece show. And then I went in and I was going to go see a movie and decided not to because I was very shocked. There were actual people in the movie theater. Like I would have been, like it was almost completely sold out. I was like, oh, I'm not used to going to the movies with people in it. That's crazy. But yeah. And we also have an awesome community over there. Use the coupon code COACH and that'll save you when you sign up. And if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com, that is using Podpage. And if you'd like to use Podpage, you can use my affiliate link, which is trypodpage.com. It's amazing. And I'll just, to vibe on that a second, somebody asked in Reddit for a great looking website, and I meant to send them to podglomerate.com, except they're on WordPress, and they were having a serious error of some sort that, basically gave you an error message, but they used Podpage for their network site, and that was up and fine. So just something to think about. We're using Ecamm Live. If you want to check out Ecamm Live, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/Ecamm. Links will be in the show notes for all this stuff. And if you need more Jim Cullison, and hey, who doesn't? Check him out over at theaverageguy.tv and check out his show, Home Gadget Geeks. And it's time to find the featured supporter of the week. And yes, Ralph is on the wheel twice now, once for the, Grit and Growth Business Show and the Financially Confident Christian. Who will be the winner? The winter? I can't talk today. Earlier I said a cup of coffee, and I know a lot of cops drink coffee, but that was weird. And now, let's just spin the wheel. And I also see there's someone on here I got to take off. I was like, oh, oops. Oh, look at it. The one and only Chris Stone from castahead.net.
I didn't see it, Dave. Do you have it up? Are you showing it?
Yeah. Do you not? Holy cow. There we go. See, honest.
Oh, there we go. Awesome.
Yeah.
I see it now. I didn't see it first.
I don't know what happened. It's crazy. But also the guy that was talking about, I need a video editor and I need clips and all that other stuff. That's kind of what Chris does over there at castahead.net. Also a valuable member of the School of Podcasting. So, Chris, thanks for your support. We deeply appreciate it. And if this show is, are you seeing what I'm saying? Yes. It will, if this show has saved you time, if it saved you money, if it saved you some headaches, if we have kept you educated or entertained, maybe it's time to give some of that back. Go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And here's a fun question that it's one of those golden oldies that we go back to every now and then. And that is the old network question. And I just thought it was odd. He said, seeing if there's any resources that might point me towards a new podcast network. I think we have an awesome show, and our local network hasn't been the most helpful for marketing or cross-promotion. Any helps on this? Thanks. Well, if you're just doing cross-promotion, there's this thing called Google, and you Google whatever your topic is, and then the word podcast. So if you're doing a show about golf, Google golf podcasts, go out to those people and go, hey, I'm thinking of setting up a network where we'll all cross-promote each other. That's the easiest and the best one because there's no contracts, there's no money, et cetera, et cetera. He says, we do audio visual as of late, our metrics vary between getting 30 to 100 listens an episode between all sources. That's interesting. So that's not just audio, that's audio and video. Our genre is society and culture, and our cover topics from true crime to paranormal with some humor sprinkled in. So I'm starting to see why maybe, true crime and paranormal are somewhat related, especially when ghosts come in and kill you. We started late last July, had a lot of hiccups, but we've been consistent and slowly growing. We are initially approached by a network that does local pods. Oh, I hate it when people, come on my pod. No, show. Anyway, I'm really just trying to find a better partner to help with reach and engagement, but I suppose that's more my job. Yes, it is. I was posting to see if there are better ways to get us in front of scouting/producing eyes and ears, reaching out to see if there are any avenues I'm unaware of. I'm absolutely doing what I can for discovery and engagement. And that's the one I always go, are you? Are you putting flyers out in the local laundry? Are you doing everything? You're doing the easy stuff, probably is what you're doing. And I'm delegating more social media projects, promotion to my team. So he has a team. That's interesting. So my thing is that everybody thinks that a network, I was looking for, I have a book. There's a great book called Make Noise by Eric Newsom. And he has a great point. He said, networks don't make small shows big. They make big shows bigger. And it reminds me a little bit of musicians that start off and they're like, man, we need a manager. And I'm like, you haven't had a gig yet. Like, you get a manager when there's something to manage and you no longer can manage it by yourself. Then you get a manager so that you can go back to working on the music stuff. And I'm just I guess I need to go find some people that are on a network that go, oh, this is what really, I mean, everything was going good. But when we joined, the Collison network, like we just exploded. I've never heard that from anybody. And I think it's a great way to definitely help grow your show. So go find some like-minded shows and cross-promote. But I know like Jordan Harbinger is on Podcast One. And one of the benefits there, now Jordan, by the way, was a big show already when he joined Podcast One, but that got him access to Adam Carolla and a bunch of other celebrities. Like he just interviewed Kelsey Grammer. And going back to the Rick Beato discussion, how did Jordan open up that discussion? Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. I just read your book on the plane. He read the book. He didn't just go, oh, I'm just going to ask him about Cheers. He actually read the book, and consequently, it was a really good interview. And you heard Kelsey Grammer, in my opinion, in a very transparent and honest way say, thank you very much, because not everybody reads the book. And so, that joining that network got him access to, quote, celebrities. And that definitely helps, because there's another one where a lot of times Jordan is talking about traveling or government things overseas that I'm, CIA, FBI stuff that I kind of like, but but Kelsey Grammer, I love Feedback Friday. I listen every Friday to Jordan, but sometimes his guests are not really what I'm interested in. And so that was something I thought was interesting but I just, the other thing to keep in mind with networks is go talk to somebody on the network and say, what were your numbers before and after, and what you feel are the benefits of that? And then I wish I could remember the name of the show. There was a show that joined a network and they didn't read the paperwork. And what they didn't know is they had signed away the brand to the network. Like the network owned the show now, and they were the hosts, and they got really, really giant egos because they were on this network. And apparently were a nightmare to work with. And so they got fired from their own show, and they kept the show going without them. And I was like, yeah, somebody didn't read the paperwork, but so let's see here. Two guys talking. Oh, there we go. See, there's a great example of a network. Great to see you here. He has a podcast network, and those are all, but it's all cross promotion. Like two guys, there's something, he has a police show. There's a bunch of shows, but they all cross promote each other. So that's a great example of a network. Now, does it make them, a gazillion downloads overnight? Probably not, but it's a good way. To me, that's the best use of a network. The other one is if you're all doing shows about football, you might be able to pull all your numbers together and get a sponsor. And that's where the fun begins, because then, well, this show got 100 downloads and that one got 212 and this one. So have fun with the math, divvying up the money, because when money gets involved, in the immortal words of Cyndi Lauper, money changes everything. So that's always fun. Chris says, do you feel that some shows feel like they are competing against each other for listens when they're on the network? I know that for a fact. Back in the day when I was on Pod Show, ask Adam Curry about running a network. First of all, he will tell you straight up, rule number one, you can't monetize the network. He will say that over and over and over. And he said it was babysitting, because the shows that were big, got more money from sponsors, and consequently were getting more exposure because people were looking for the show, probably because it was good. And then there's that, anytime I hear the discoverability problem, what somebody is really saying is nobody's discovering my show. And so all the smaller shows were like, hey, how come they got more money than I did? And you're like, well, you're doing a show about super duper 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 niche show. They're doing a show with a much wider audience. Consequently, they get more downloads, and that's the way it was. And he just said it was a nightmare. And so then instead of having this network of people working together to cross promote or whatever it was, you had a bunch of people complaining about each other and hating each other. And so he doesn't talk about it a lot, but when he talks about the early days of Pod Show, he'll be like, ugh, it was just a nightmare. So yeah. Let's see. Here he says, we'll have to talk about a program dedicated to the benefits or pitfalls of networks. 20 years this year. 20 years. Holy cow. It's not all roses and chocolate. I've made it where the network does the work when the people on it don't want to, for the most part. We will have to have you come on. Gordon would also share very deal-oriented stuff about the copyright and the details not to be taken on any network. Yeah, that's the thing that it gets kind of tricky. Much like we always talk about when you have a co-host, be sure to have that awkward conversation about who owns what. But then also when you get into a network, that gets kind of icky, and you just got to know what you're getting into, because otherwise, it gets kind of, it can get kind of icky that way. Another oldie but goodie that we can throw in here. I'm looking up. I'm like, all right, we're almost at time. We got time for this one. Best way to share links from when and where. Just wanted to survey people on if they do any personal advertising for their shows, how they share links to it. I've done some sharing through Discord and usually share a Spotify link because that's what I listen to most podcasts on. That is definitely going to be a question of the month on the School of Podcasting, is not how many, but what percentage of your audience is on Spotify. Because I am here to tell you, it's either hit or miss. It's either 80% or 6. It's I think this show is probably like 8, something like that. But anyway, he says, my podcast is available most everywhere, so I'm confused about if there's a preferred way on the receiving end. If someone shared a link to a podcast with you, bonus question is where people share links and do personal advertising besides shouting out into the void. Not sure what he means by that. But for me, always share a link to the episode on your website. Why? Because depending on how many other people then share that same link, that can boost your SEO. And then on that episode or somewhere on that site when they land, have links to at least Apple and Spotify. You might want to throw in Overcast and Pocket Cast. But that way the audience is in charge of where they listen. So many people used to share Apple links. And until about, 5-10 years ago, if you shared an Apple link to somebody in Europe where 70% of them are using an Android phone, it was completely useless. So always share a link to your site. Jim, what do you do when you're sharing links?
I like to get them on a landing page. I mean, that's for the most part. I want to bring them back to the site. I want them, you spend so much time on those silly show notes that if you are going to share a link with them, and then, then on each landing page, I try to make sure I have all the appropriate, if, hey, subscribe here or go there. If you're going to, make it easy for Spotify, even though the numbers are small, make it easy. Make it easy for your Apple Podcast friends to have a button there or whatever so they can easily subscribe to it. But I want to bring them back. I want to bring them back to the page. I want them to come, if they're going to click on something, I want them to come back and see some things. That's what I'm trying to do. Is it the most successful way of doing it? I don't know, but that's what I like. That's where I want them to be.
Well, and there are a few of these websites that probably begin with pod, like Pod Follow, or I'm just making that up. Pod Like Me, Pod something, and they'll be like, oh, just go to podalicious.io/my website, whatever. And I'm like, number one, that website's going to go out of business in about 5 years because it's free, and free business is not a good business model. Number two, why are you not reinforcing your brand? Why aren't you saying, hey, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/follow, where all of the buttons are there, and you can subscribe on whatever app you want? Because especially if you're linking to that stuff, and so for 150 episodes, you've been linking to Podalicious, and then Podalicious goes away because it turns out making links for people is not really a great business model if you're not charging for it, and nobody will pay for it because, hey, I could do this on my own website for free. Now you got 150 links that are dead, and that's not good for SEO either. and it's annoying for for everybody. So that would be my advice on that. And I'm gonna do a quick scroll here through the chat room. I don't see any other questions. And so with that, talking about not wasting people's time, we're going to get out 4 minutes early. Holy cow. Are you kidding me? Yes, we are.
Time
it is.
Mow the lawn.
So Jim, what is coming up on Home Gadget Geeks?
TJ Huddleston from HomeTech.fm is with me this week. Talk a little gardening tech. And so we spend some time. It's amazing, the technology that just, if you're a raised bed gardener, if you've got, if you got hanging plants, if you're doing drip irrigation, all that stuff has automation available for it now, which is super cool, including all the manifolds for your irrigation, if you're doing it that way. So TJ and I spent some time talking about that, as well as a few other topics. It's available today, homegadgetgeeks.com.
Dan says this is a great show this week. So,
thanks,
hey,
man.
Every now and then we do something good. Who knows? And then Lane says, we all know Dave Jackson owns all those domains anyway. I went and counted over 300 domains. Many of them now are for sale. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/domains, I'm getting rid of a lot of those because that's just ridiculous. On the School of Podcasting, I mentioned it earlier, Thomas Umstadt Jr. from Novel Marketing, because he's a book guy. Novelmarketing.com is coming on, and he's a guy that's, I love him because he's kind of a nerd. He's definitely a mad scientist. And so as he was trying YouTube and trying new things, he kept great notes. His pitch was amazing. He sent like graphs and charts of here's what's working, here's what's not working. And I was like, oh, dude, you are definitely coming on the show to talk about this. So we're talking some real life examples of what happens when you do YouTube. Is it worth it? He is making some money. The question is he profitable? Ooh, that's the question that I'm going to leave you with. And we'll see you next week with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.